Hello, everybody. It is so wonderful to see you here today. I am honored to be a part of this conference, to have the opportunity to share a little bit about what we know about AI, how things are changing in the threat landscape, as well as some insights that we have from other people, CISOs, leaders in the area of AI and security, followed by our Darktrace AI maturity model. So first things first, I think it's imperative that we take a minute and think about what's going on in the world. What is happening in the threat landscape? What are the new things that are popping up now that we're dealing with advanced threats enabled by AI? Second, I like to learn about what everybody else is doing. I like to understand how people are interpreting what we know about AI, how we can use AI to defend against these types of threats, as well as some of the different types of techniques and applications of different analytics that are best suited for security. Finally, I feel like I'm breathing into this. Finally, we'll walk through the Darktrace AI maturity model. This, to me, is very important because every single company, every single domain has a unique place on their journey in integrating AI for security, depending on where they are in that process. So let's dig in. Who in here knows about CVEs? Who knows about vulnerabilities? We look at this all the time. This is central to what we believe is going on in the world of security. In 2024, there were over 40,000 new CVEs. This is absolutely a landmark shift in what we're seeing in the threat landscape. That 40,000 new CVE number represents over 15% of the CVEs that have ever been recorded. Why is this happening? You know, we can make a lot of guesses. We can assume that a lot of it has to do with AI, but we're still figuring that out. And you may think, oh, you know what, Margaret, like CVEs, they're not always exploited. I don't really care. You know, these are just numbers, people find things, no big deal. These are actually known exploited vulnerabilities. And this is a relatively new thing. I think CISO started tracking this in the early 2000s. And I'm looking only at the data from 2004 and 2005 because this is when that data started to look a little bit more normal. So in Q1 of 2004, this is how many exploited vulnerabilities were in KEV. Compare this to 2005. It's double. Q2, double. Q3, it looks lower. We're not finished with Q3 yet. So we're only a little bit over halfway through, but we've hit almost 80%. And what we also know about these exploits is that once something hits the CVE list, it gets the number, it's there, people are starting to exploit them in under 24 hours. How is this happening? Why such a big change? I personally believe there's a lot of automations. I think there's a lot of different types of people using AI to understand what the vulnerabilities are and find ways to exploit them as quickly as possible before anyone is ready to defend. So, you know, prepare ourselves for that. Another absolutely wild thing that happened this year in June is that an AI hacker took the first place spot in the HackerOne leaderboard. This is also brand new. We have had bug bounty hunters, people, you know, doing vulnerability research forever, and they climb the leaderboards, and this is a great thing. It's wonderful that we have that. All of a sudden, we have Expo, which is an AI-enabled collaborative, beating every single individual person on that bug bounty list. How are they doing it? How did they do it without spending years and years and years learning how to do it. This is AI. Within 42 days, which is, in our world, very, very fast, we saw HackerOne introduce an entirely new category for their leaderboard called collectives, because they had to accommodate for the fact that individual people and AI-enabled collectives are going to perform differently on this. If we think that it's only the bug bounty hunters and the vulnerability researchers, the good guys, who are doing this, we're being very, very foolish. So as we think back into the numbers from the CVEs, from the KEVs, looking at how quickly AI-enabled hacking has changed the leaderboards, has changed the landscape, we need to understand that threat actor groups, nation states, script kiddies are out there using these same techniques to find vulnerabilities in all of your systems. Some of them more coordinated than others, but the time is here and it's happening. So besides, the global terrifying news, I hate to be a scary person, but occasionally we have to tell a little bit of the truth. I also want to share some brand new research. This is a mid-year report from the Darktrace Threat Intelligence Lab. And we've, I think, just published this last week. So this is 5 months of data from our team. We had over 12 million phishing emails detected. And of course, not everyone uses our email product. So this is really just a slice of what we're seeing in the world. On top of that, close to 70% of these emails pass DMARC, which traditionally has been used to help people understand and detect email threats. The types of things that are coming in through the inbox are changing, and they're changing in ways that evade some of the traditional approaches, like secure email gateways, coming right through. 25% are also targeting VIP users. This is an extraordinary percentage, as it represents how deeply attackers understand that getting access to key email accounts, impersonating key people in an organization is a rapid way to cause a lot of damage within a company. 32% contained high text volume. I didn't want to make everybody's eyeballs bleed by putting too much text here, but that text volume is not only in English anymore. So this amount of text, convincing, social engineering, deeply detailed, using open source intelligence, is targeting people in their native language. This is a huge shift in what we've seen previously, and this is enabled by AI. We also saw over 1 million QR code email come through in the month of February. So this continues to be one of the primary ways for attackers to get into our companies. Ransomware, another hot topic. This again continues to be a huge risk for organizations. Persistent threat groups that used to rely on kind of predictable TTPs, things like that, are starting to use much more varied techniques. They're evading detection through creativity and different types of innovative approaches. They are leveraging info stealers who are selling credentials online. Lots of different types of creative malware are making that data available to pretty much anyone who's willing to buy it. Another one is that these types of attacks that we're seeing in our threat research group are coming in some very suggestive timing patterns across all of our customer fleets that make us believe that there's quite a bit of automation in the way that they're deploying. Another one is that we're seeing a lot of different types of legitimate tools being exploited for ransomware. And what that means is that when you're watching things within an environment And it's a legitimate tool, it's a legitimate account, legitimate credentials. It's much more difficult to detect why or what's going wrong if you're depending on different types of policy violations, for instance. Another big shift is that we're digging into identity. We used to see so many things hitting the endpoint, but now we're getting straight into SSO and IAM over all of the endpoints to get directly at someone's identity. SaaS account compromise, people trying to get into Salesforce and things like that, are not only to get the sensitive information, there's also a lot of valuable configuration information in SaaS applications that can help an attacker traverse your entire organization. Cloud is an area where most cloud tooling offers cloud security posture management, but potentially some gaps in logging, some gaps in credentials, and difficulty finding credential abuse. Business logic is another great one. Again, to take over somebody's identity, take over somebody's access, and start working through the business as what seems to be a completely normal user. Okay, what do you think? Are you excited? Do we feel like we have work to do? I feel like we have some work to do, because that was a lot of stuff. And luckily, I think we're all in the same boat. So this AI Insights section covers a lot of different types of findings that we have from talking to CISOs, talking to people who have been sitting in this seat, thinking about the changing threat landscape, thinking about different attack vectors, because really we're all in the same boat and we're all kind of on the same team, because we've got to get it done somehow. So who in here believes that AI is going to be key for defending against all of this new stuff? Well, I don't know. I'm not even convinced if I should keep going. It's kind of, no? Oh, okay. Well, it seems like 95% of people in our side of the defense world think that AI is going to help us. And we're also getting quite a bit of budget dedicated to this. Who has like a little bit of budget for AI? I promise I'm not asking for salespeople. I'm just curious if it's been a focus of your company. Oh, okay, I'll pretend. But it's become a huge point of interest. And I know a lot of leaders are having people ask, what are you doing? How are you adding AI? How can you defend against AI? What's in your tools? But it's very much top of mind for people in our industry. The really tough part about that is most people just deeply don't understand very much about it. So almost like 42% of people say that they understand all of the different types of AI. And this actually sinks down quite low for people who are not in leadership roles. So some of the practitioners in the space of security really don't feel like they have a grasp on what AI does, how do you use it, what is it just ChatGPT, is it something more than that? And it specifically starts to sort of go into the red on understanding if you think about anything besides generative AI. So if you look at something like natural language processing, generative adversarial networks, everyone just starts to give you like the puppy dog head tilt. What is that? I don't really know. And it's part of like our jobs as leaders in this space to help people understand what it means and how to use it. Another interesting part is that a lot of times we're in security saying, we have not enough people. We're very burnt out. We have a workforce shortage. And everything that we're dealing with in terms of alert fatigue, too many things going on in the SOC, is sort of leaning in that we don't have enough people, we don't have enough tools, we don't have enough resources to manage this threat. But when you start looking at how people are thinking about solving that problem, it's very rarely that we're going to add more people. So if we're saying we have too much work to do, but we're not going to add people, there has to be some sort of magic in that solution. And it's seeming more likely that a lot of that is going to be advanced analytics and AI. I will sort of caveat that by saying my personal beliefs, which, take them or leave them. There is a lot of emphasis or interest in how we can make people perform better with AI versus replacing people with AI solutions. And that is ultimately the key to it. So a lot of people would worry like, oh, are you really gonna try and replace people with AI? No, it's more that we know that people have too much to do, and we need to figure out how to get them better tools so that they can do their jobs well. So anyway, toss that one in there for some thought. So how do we deal with all of these different types of solutions, personnel issues, strategy issues? Well, one of the things that we certainly can't do is pick the wrong types of AI for the wrong types of problems. Recently, Gartner said that by 2027, close to half, maybe 40% of agentic AI projects will be canceled. This is really about cost, and it's also about business value. So if we're using the wrong types of techniques for the wrong types of problems, we're not going to see the value out of these solutions, especially when it comes to AI. So if we can work in this world to help each other understand the best ways to approach these problems, the best techniques for detections, the best types of strategies for dealing with the complexities of cybersecurity, the better chance we have to avoid landing in the canceled project bucket. So we have so many different types of things going on. It only makes sense that there are a lot of different approaches that we could possibly take for this. And I think sometimes even hearing the word AI, people are like, again, do we have to talk about AI? Do we still have to talk about AI? And I find that it can be very helpful to think a little bit more deeply about the specifics of the words that we're using when we're talking about this. So starting all the way on the left, for agentic AI are systems that can work autonomously to analyze and process different types of information and ultimately take actions without a lot of human intervention. I don't really have to tell it what to do, but it's going to help me make a decision. Another thing when we're talking about machine learning and AI is Bayesian probability. So Bayesian types of statistics and machine learning learn from themselves over time. It's a probabilistic modeling approach where you don't have to take a measurement, take another, and compare it with big chunks of time. It actually continues to address and accommodate historical data into the modeling that helps us have a little bit more specificity and accuracy in our predictions. Ensemble learning, simply put, is using multiple models to tell us something. We like to say if you were going to write a big paper and put it in the news, you would not ask one person. It'd be kind of a bad story if you only ask one person. So why would you only ask one model if you really, really needed to have a lot of confidence in what you think that you're detecting? So ensemble approaches to AI using multiple different types of methods can help us have much more confidence in what we believe the model is telling us, and it allows us to not be dependent on one thing. It's very, very great. Large language models are deep learning that are pre-trained on lots of data. Not all large language models are ChatGPT. There are other types of language models that can be used to classify language, classify data, and create embeddings that are highly dependable and do not have the same issues like hallucinations. So generative AI, which almost has become synonymous with AI, is what we're very used to seeing with text generation as well as image generation. This content is created dynamically. It's also probabilities. It's the best guess of what word should come next. It's the best guess on those answers. And that's why it's so confident and sometimes so confidently incorrect. Graph theory, I really shouldn't because I could nerd out on this one for a long time, allows us to put a lot of data into structures between entities like devices, locations, and those relationships, and track those relationships in the edges. Things like graph theory and neural networks based on graphs can help us understand what's coming next, as well as the structure of things like a cybersecurity incident. All in all of these different tools allow us to do what we need to do, but they need to be applied specifically to the use cases that are most meaningful with the correct tools being used for the correct problems. If you take a layered approach that uses these things together, you can actually start building a systemic way of using analytics, AI, and machine learning to address the different types of issues that we see in security today. So I will admit that while I love ChatGPT, generative AI, makes my grocery list for me, helps me organize my calendar, helps me make up funny jokes for my 5-year-old, I don't necessarily want it to take its best guess on security detections because it makes things up. It is very immature on how it processes and reasons. It will over-apply different types of processes to these answers for critical issues that we have. Sometimes it will be very inaccurate. Who has been lied to by ChatGPT? I have been lied to by ChatGPT. I would not want the people on my security team to believe the lies of an LLM being used in this capacity to help me hunt for a threat. That would be bad news. They're also pretty vulnerable. Has anyone been slightly interested in some of the prompt hacking, prompt injection issues that we see in language models? Yes, we're being targeted there because we're becoming so dependent on them. So really, again, there are places for this type of AI, generative systems in security, but it's not in the places that we're seeing them all the time. I would say great for generating a fake phishing email. Doesn't have to be that good, right? Doesn't have to be perfect. Not so great for telling me in a deterministic way that something has gone wrong and what I should do about it. That's where it becomes very risky. So this is a very, very complicated looking incident. And what it's doing is showing you an actual investigation that's using ensemble approaches, graph neural networks, and a hierarchical, multi-layered AI system. And it's able to do that because it used multiple types of clustering, Bayesian learning, graph analytics, predictive analytics. This is everything to do with AI, nothing to do with generative AI and large language models. So using different types of these advanced analytics allows something like the AI analyst in Darktrace to combine over 38 incidents into a single attack so that a team doesn't have to do that work, the legwork, of uniting all of those things. And traditionally speaking, this is what it might look like to an analyst. Digging through logs, finding hundreds of alerts, sorting out how to connect the dots. And sure, maybe you have, some correlations, maybe you have a sim, maybe you have a dashboard, but there's still tons and tons of manual work that is going to become increasingly difficult for human team members to do alone. So again, how can we support? How can we create ways of supporting humans who have kind of a horrible amount of work to do, especially with so many new types of threats, manage them effectively? We have to give them the right tools. So this right here, though, this one, not such a bad use case for generative AI. Maybe it can help you write a report. So this kind of leads me to where we are going with the Darktrace AI maturity model. And it's not meant to be anything except for a tool to help people understand where they are in a journey, as well as different types of options for shifting from a reactive stance to a more proactive stance using AI, should you choose to go there. And this is a big deal because, again, if we need to avoid being stuck in a place where our AI projects might fail, our investments into tooling, our investments into different types of techniques end up being a waste of money or a failed project. So if we can start digging into the potential of AI, the limitations of AI, benchmarking your company's current status and capabilities, and then start working on a roadmap so that should you choose to enable more types of automation, you know what it would look like to get there. This is also a great way to look at the different types of vendors and different types of technologies that you're introducing into your company and help communicate what you need with your security team and leadership to get the types of stakeholder buy-in that can be a real challenge. So I know we've probably all really wanted something cool, and we have to convince a non-security person that that very cool thing is going to be worth it. We don't always get what we want, but the better we can communicate what that is, what the end goal is, and where we're headed, the easier it is for other people who don't live and breathe this every day to go on that journey with us. So I know this is going from dark mode to light mode. Is everybody awake now? So I'm not going to read this slightly wordy slide. And we do have a white paper on this, and you can have access to it. It's very easy to find. But ultimately, again, we're going on a journey from reactive to proactive. In the big picture, if we're seeing a huge spike in vulnerabilities, if we're seeing a lot more, kevs out there and people are exploiting things more quickly, when we have manual operations and no one has the ability to automate things, we're essentially putting a giant stack of paper, a giant stack of information next to a human being who then has to sort through it somewhat magically, and all of a sudden they're completely underwater, overloaded. So a lot of places will say, okay, we've got to do something. We put in orchestration, we put in rules, we have ticketing systems, we have ways to communicate, we take some of that burden off. But it's very much dependent on different types of logic and different types of tooling that also have to be built, maintained, and configured. Then when we get to this sort of almost middle layer here, we're getting assistance maybe through summaries, but it's not necessarily making any decisions for us. And in some ways, this point here with AI assistance makes us feel like we're about to get a lot of help, but because it's giving us so much more information and generating text and telling us things, it can actually at times add to the workload because it's not actually doing the work for you. It's summarizing or helping you get access to more data. I have experienced moments in my life where more data wasn't necessarily a good thing. It wasn't really saving me time. Has anyone tried to write a paper with ChatGPT? Like, you're like, oh, I gotta finish this. And you're like, oh no, now I have to read all of this stuff from ChatGPT, and it's worse than what I would have done. So I'm gonna ask it to do it again, and then it does it again, and then I'm reading it again. Then I'm like, edit this for yourself, and it's still like, I'm going back and forth, and it's 2 hours later. I haven't gotten any work done, but I've generated 35 pages of new junk to sift through. There is some danger of that here, especially in security. When we have all of these great tools to get into advanced searches, and we're like, great, I can dig and dig and dig and dig and dig. I have help, but it's not making decisions for you. It's not actually offloading that cognitive burden at all. It's giving you more stuff to go through. This level 3 is where a bit of that AI is going to help us promise becomes to be realized. Because this is where different types of specialized agents, not necessarily using generative AI, maybe it's more of a decision logic or a graph neural net or ensemble models or what have you. It's when these very specific tasks are empowered and completed by agents that can do a lot of it for you, or that can actually take a lot of the information and instead of telling you more about it, start narrowing that decision and giving you fewer options to choose from. And this is really a tough spot for generative AI, because this is where we start depending on those systems to be right. They have to be right, otherwise we can't use them. The ultimate goal here is if we can get to a point where we can deeply trust and delegate to different types of AI agents, because not only are they robust, reliable, accurate, but they've earned our trust. It would take me personally probably quite a bit of time to deeply trust an AI agent to make decisions for me. But I do think that we're going to get there. And I do think that a lot of us are going to get a lot smarter about what it looks like to trust these agents, the questions we ask about how they're built, and the different types of ways they're deployed in our environment, and whether or not we want them to make different types of decisions. So, again, when we start seeing that big stack of paper hitting somebody on the manual edge over here, it should look like a lower stack of paper. It's still going to be stuff to do. I don't think we're ever going to get off the hook, but it will look like a less intimidating mountain of things to do when we can finally start partnering with agentic systems that can help us reduce our cognitive load, help us make better decisions, and help us offload some of the types of things that we need to do every day. So luckily, I work with someone who gave me a great way of phrasing this. I didn't come up with this one on my own, but this maturity model actually comes in multiple flavors of ice cream. So thank you to my coworker, John, for that one. But risk management is something that most people have to deal with. And when we think about what it looks like to manage risk, it's not easy. Patching stuff is not easy. It's difficult to understand the dependencies. Maybe we get a one-off. But ultimately, there are a lot of different types of manual operations, from scheduled vulnerability scanning and patching decisions, all the way through different types of patch prioritization systems when we start getting a little bit more help from AI-driven attack path management. Ultimately, if we can get all the way to delegation, the AI should be patching and keeping track of all of these things and helping us be compliant without us having to do very much at all. So this is one flavor of the maturity model. Another is the SOC. And this one I think is like the one I hold the most dear to my heart, because I came from working in building products for people, but also from operational settings where I watched people who I worked with every day and cared about and partnered with kind of suffer through what it can look like in a very, very busy SOC. So on the manual side, if you can imagine, as the different types of threats that we're seeing grow in complexity, in volume, if we're hoping that we can have teams that can manually search through indicators of compromise, logs, etc., we are really, really going to be in a bit of a sufferfest, because even when we have great detection engineering, we can't get through them all when we have to do it manually, which means we are specifically ignoring things because we don't have time to deal with them, which opens us up to quite a bit of risk. Automations, rules, different types of out-of-the-box models is probably where a lot of people are today. You may have different analytic models for network, or you might have data protection or DLP or something like that, where it comes with a bunch of rules or a bunch of policies that help you build out these detections in your environment. And they're maintained using a bunch of workflows with a lot of different types of rules. But ultimately, it's still very difficult, and we're still often making choices about what we investigate and what we do not investigate, leaving us open to some risk. So as we push further into this, we can start thinking about AI as a partner in terms of what it can distinguish within our organization, how it's hunting for things, and how it's consolidating data from pretty much anywhere to help us understand different types of known and emerging threats. So as you can see, like the big push on every flavor of this maturity model so far is helping with decisions, helping with workload, and coming up with ways to be very specific about what we automate for these various use cases. Not every technique for the SOC is going to work for the other types of maturity models like this one. You might not use the same types of ideas or the same types of logic, but we are going to have to build it out in a way that builds partnerships with AI. So containment is a big one, and I know that this can be kind of tricky because every single environment has its unique issues and its unique factors, but playbooks, manual containment, different types of disaster recovery can be very, very hard to maintain, very hard to manage, and require a lot of different types of people in a company to do it well. I think that if you had to think of any flavor of AI maturity, this will be the hardest one to really turn into that true partnership. But there is a path from going through manual playbooks into ways that you can get into specialized containment activities, different types of procedures, and different types of support that are bespoke specifically for your company. And so these are the sorts of navigation that we can make when we start to understand where we are and some of the ways forward to get into a more proactive security stance in these spaces. These is everything all together. I won't read them. I don't think that'd be a good move. But there is a journey that we can all go on together. And there are ways to understand what types of work are going on in your company, where you are in terms of manual versus automated, and there are decision points. What would be the most value for you? Would it be focusing on the SOC? Would it be focusing on vulnerability management? And you can start thinking about what your biggest issues are, where you are in that stage from manual to AI delegation, and come up with a path that can help you start assisting the people who you're working with to get a little bit of a better handle on what we're seeing in the threat landscape. So this is, again, to me, about trust. how much can we trust our technology? How much can we trust what we're building and what we're integrating? And what can we do and what comes next? So we know AI is here, people are using it, it's impacting the threat landscape, and defenders really need to start taking into consideration how to use some of those same tools to defend. We also have a big gap in knowledge in our leadership. We feel so deeply committed to AI, but we don't always understand what we're using and the techniques that are available. But who thinks that we can get away with the same approaches for defense? I don't think we can. So if we are dealing with attackers who will never get tired, they will continuously find new ways to exploit, they will be scaling with one person potentially being represented by multiple hundreds of agents. If we think that we are going to be okay on the defense side if we don't force multiply our people inside the defenders, we're going to have a really hard time maintaining the security that we need in our companies. The AI maturity model is one way that you can start thinking about where you are and where you can take your company. I think that's really what I have for you today, and I appreciate you all bearing with me and listening to all of this in English, but I would love to take some time and answer questions about anything AI, anything security, or maturity model, what have you. So.
Le damos un aplauso muy grande a Margaret. Thank you, Margaret, for your speech. Very interesting. Quiero invitarles a que puedan escanear el código QR que vamos a proyectar en la pantalla para que puedan hacer algunas preguntas para Margaret. Bueno, ideal si las puedan hacer en inglés, si no las hacemos en español y se las vamos a traducir a Margaret para que puedan ahí proyectar la producción, el código QR y podamos hacer las preguntas. Bueno, a ver. Yo tengo, ahí está. Entonces, se meten a menti.com o escanean directamente ese código QR y tienen que poner ese código, el 79907080, y ya pueden escribir las preguntas y se van a ir proyectando en la pantalla. Yo tengo algunas acá. A ver, vamos a ver. I will start with some questions, Margaret, for you. First of all, what mistakes do companies often make when they start using AI for security? You talk about that, but maybe you can talk more in detail. Le estaba preguntando cuáles son los errores que cometen usualmente las compañías cuando empiezan a usar inteligencia artificial aplicada a la seguridad.
I think sometimes people don't ask enough questions. And we know for vendor security assessments and things like that, we have minimum requirements, but we're still learning how to ask the right questions about AI-enabled products. So my suggestion is that if you're considering looking for a new product that is promising AI, ask them what types of models they use. Ask them what types of data they use. Ask how they use your data in training their models. Ask them how often their models are updated. This is a big deal. And so I think even if you're not sure, excuse me, even if you're not sure what you want the answer to be, ask anyway and collect them and then think about what they're saying.
You need water? Wait. Bueno, vamos a seguir preguntándole. Los invito a que sigan escaneando el código QR para que podamos hacer preguntas. ¿Quieres este? Okay. Are you okay, Margaret? Yeah, okay. Bueno, vamos a seguir viendo. Acá han llegado varias otras preguntas para que podamos hacérselas a Margaret y aprovechemos de tener este tiempo para preguntar la mayor cantidad. I have a lot of questions for you, Margaret. So maybe we can project it here. Las podemos proyectar en la producción o las leo yo acá de mi teléfono. Dice, Do you think that AI can scale up to the task of everyday data flow in an energy-efficient manner?
Yes, but not necessarily using the types of models that you might be most familiar with. So there are a lot of ways to make small models that are very deeply customizable. And so if you have smaller models, like we have a model that's it's a language model, it's an embedding model, it runs on CPU, it outperforms larger models because it was built specifically for a task. And so if we try to use a very big model that's very energy hungry, they don't always actually give us what we want. And so again, it's about building models specific to what we need them to do and being very conscientious about where we need those to be deployed, how much money it costs to run them, and some of the follow-on factors that can make it prohibitively expensive to use different AI models. But again, yeah, we can.
Excellent. Here I have another question. What skills should the next generation of cybersecurity professionals prioritize to stay relevant in AI-driven environment?
I am actually going to maybe say something wild. I think it's very important to understand the basics. I think you need to understand the problems you're trying to solve, and also it all comes down to data. So if you're working in security, being very good at understanding the types of data that you get from your tools, the types of data that you can have access to understand your network, your cloud, your email. If you understand the data and you understand what you need to know from it, it's much easier to be savvy when it comes to building, deploying, maintaining, or assessing different types of AI.
Thank you. Wow, I have a lot of questions here. You mentioned embedding models. What is their application in cybersecurity?
Oh, wonderful. So embedding models are language models, but instead of creating more text, it's a way of chunking the language into pieces and storing it, embedding it into like a vector space. So it's basically turning language into math, so you can find where those little things are anytime you need to look for them again. So it's a way of classifying language versus generating language.
Another one. Based on the Darktrace insights, how many years from now do you think there will be a major IA-powered cyber attack that will cripple a vital technology such as public services or healthcare?
I think it's possible right now, and a lot of the reasons why we're not seeing it is because people are afraid of the retaliation. So my hunch is that every major nation state has the ability and access to cause critical failures, but are being diplomatic about doing that because they don't want retaliation. So.
Thank you, Margaret. And the last one, because we don't have much more time, but what level of AI collaboration do you think we have to try to accomplish by 2027 and 2030?
I think it's really going to depend on your vertical, the types of workload and threats that you're seeing. It will really depend on that. But ultimately, if we're not partnering to some degree, and having it not at that level where we're getting more data, but we're really having decision support, we need to get to that point where we have decision support.
Le damos un aplauso enorme a Margaret Cunningham por hoy venir a compartirnos su experiencia, su conocimiento desde Darktrace aquí a Santiago de Chile. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. Thanks.